I'm going to show you how to create a portrait or any subject using subtractive value with charcoal and your eraser. So to create a drawing in the subtractive value technique, you'll need a sheet of charcoal toned paper, and I will link the video in the description below on how to create your own charcoal toned paper. I will be working from a photograph, so I've got my photograph here. And other supplies that you'll need, I have a sheet of wax paper. Any little piece of scrap paper will do. This is to rest my hand on so that I don't smudge my drawing. In the early stages of my drawing, I'm going to be using vine charcoal. So I've got little pieces of vine and large erasers. I have a couple different large erasers. And then as I move on in the later stages of my drawing, I'm going to use a detail eraser. I have a little retractable eraser and charcoal pencils. I have a hard and a medium charcoal pencil. So you can see here I have a preliminary sketch. I used the grid to help me get the composition and the proportions. But this is all in vine. The grid is done in vine. The sketching is done in vine. And by the final product, we don't want any big areas of vine because, as you can see, fingerprints just show up really easily on the vine charcoal, and that is not a look we're going for. So when you do start erasing, I'm using a large gum eraser here, but any of your erasers, and actually a variety of your erasers, would be really good. When we start erasing, so I'm going to start with the background here. This area is going to be a lot lighter than my dark hair. So I'm going to start erasing. If you just press really lightly, a little bit of the charcoal comes up and it lightens it just a tad, which sometimes is good, and we can use that. That's what you're going for. But in a lot of areas, you're going to want to bring up a lot of that charcoal to get it nice and bright. So you just have to really just put some muscle into it and get in there to erase those areas. So if I go right up here against my shoulder and my hair, it's going to really start to bring that out through contrast. And I really just have to dig in there with the eraser. Actually, that ends about here. And you can see that it starts to bring up this brightness and contrast. And I can continue to go into it, and it can continue to brighten. So let's look at the progression of this drawing. So here is the sketch that I just showed, done all in vine charcoal over top a grid so that I could make sure that the proportions and composition from my photograph were accurately translated to my drawing. So the first stages then are erasing all of those highlights. I'm using a really large eraser to take out the brightest parts of the image in the largest areas. So with this image, with this photograph, it's the light source here behind my head, this side of my face, the top and shoulder of my shirt, and the tops of my pant legs. So you can see those being erased, being removed here. As I start to erase, my grid begins to disappear, which is great because I don't want grid lines in my final image. Those are only there as a guide for my proportions, and now that I have my proportions, we need that grid to slowly go away. I'm also darkening areas of shadows with the vine charcoal, so I'm still working with the vine just to give myself a sense of midtones, highlights, shadows. After I get those large areas of light and shadow plotted on my image, now I'm going to go in with my charcoal pencil and my detail eraser to get more sharpness and clarity and details in my drawing. So you can see that I've sort of sharpened up these folds in the pant leg with the charcoal pencil. It allows me to get a deeper black and more fine line. I've also started with the eraser, going in, getting some more subtle highlights on the skin. You can see this on the neck and chest, and in the hair. I love the detail eraser for the hair. So this side of the hair is getting illuminated by the window light source, and so I can use the eraser to create those light streaks. I'm also starting to plot in the background. I changed my background a little bit from my photograph. In my photo, I'm sitting on the floor in my studio, but there's this sort of shelf behind me, which isn't that interesting. I have a lamp that's sort of cut off, and I like this lamp, so I moved the lamp over and I added in a painting that hangs in my studio but just doesn't happen to be in my image. Okay, at this point, I'm starting to define the edge of the face. So I'm going in with the charcoal pencil to get that nice sharp detail and to get that contrast, because you can see my dark hair really does silhouette that side of my face. And I'm going in with more marks with the charcoal pencil to get more detail. Now I'm going to start on the facial features. So again, I'm using my detail tools. And I'm wanting to, I'm starting with the dark along the top of the eye and eyelid, because that shape of the eye is really important for a portrait, and that center line in the mouth. And here's a close-up of that, of sort of defining the main shape of the eye and that shape of the mouth, the nostril as well. As I continue with that, I want to get the sense of light and shadow in the face accented. So I'm using, again, the charcoal pencil. You can sort of see the marks of the pencil to create the shadows over here on top of that vine, because the vine is going to just sort of smear and smudge and kind of become really even gray, and I want to keep that sense of contrast. So darkening areas that need to be darkened with the charcoal pencils. Okay, at this point I really am working on details. I've gone in a lot more with the hair with the charcoal, a little bit of compressed charcoal in the darkest areas and the charcoal pencils, and then I'm going back in on the highlight areas here and here with the detail eraser. And here's a close-up of that here. You can see where I've gone in with the charcoal pencil, and then you can see all of the lines created with the eraser. Okay, at this point, I decided I did not like my background, so I erased most of that out. But since I'd already done a lot of work on the face, I'm making sure I really bring in this cover sheet now, so that anything I do on the background, I can cover my face with the wax paper so that my hand has a place to rest without resting directly on my drawing. As you can see in the face, I have put in more details such as the eyelashes and the hairs of the eyebrows. So outside my building, there's a magnolia tree that's blooming, so I took a picture of that and decided to use that for my new background. So I kind of made up this like a bench or a seat, kind of like I had a wicker or rattan maybe edge to it, and then I'm plotting in these magnolias behind. And I decided to keep them really loose. I also tried to keep the sense that it's a little lighter over here, since that's where my light source was coming from, and they get darker and in shadow over on as we move over to the left-hand side. So at that point, the textures down near the bottom, the skin, the shirt, and the pants, were all relatively similar, so I wanted to separate that, and the shirt I was wearing is actually a sweater, so I wanted to create some texture there. So I created just these lines, these ribbed lines, with the charcoal pencil, and then I went back over them with an eraser so that they weren't too noticeable and so that they faded into the highlight areas where appropriate. And this is the final image.